when you are a sanctuary city, you put limits on how much you're willing to cooperate with federal agencies' efforts to remove illegal aliens. And your policies are then contravene federal law. You just do. There's a distinction between criminal warrant, and you say we cooperate on criminal warrant, but there's two levels of cooperation at least. There's a communication level, and there's a passing the person off. That's one level with the criminal. But the civil level, this is what I want to talk about for a second, because all of these ordinances proscribe communication and transfer of someone where there's a civil warrant. Now, I know that all of you understand that a removal order is a civil order. And that means none of you and none of your agencies within your municipalities are communicating or passing over someone where there's a ICE removal detainer. So I don't care how many times, 1,226 or whatever it was in 7 years, I don't care how many times you do it, but if you're not doing it for civil orders, then you're allowing people who have a removal order, who've had due process, because that's how you get a removal order. You're allowing them to stay in the country.
Republicans are acting like there's like a mythical barrier that keeps ICE completely out of cities. If you're listening to Fox News, they make it seem like they're police at the borders of Chicago keeping ICE agents out, and that's simply not the case. In Trump's America, if you disagree with his priorities, then you lose federal dollars. Trump and Republicans are attempting to take money from blue cities and blue states and give them to their red states. Mr. Chair. So we've heard a lot of accusations and sensationalism thrown around here today, which is not new for this committee. But I do think we need to be clear about what we're really talking about today and what the so-called sanctuary city policies actually mean. What Republicans are calling sanctuary cities, it simply means that a city or a state is not going to do the job of ICE for them. That's it. Republicans are acting like there's like a mythical barrier that keeps ICE completely out of cities. If you're listening to Fox News, they make it seem like they're police at the borders of Chicago keeping ICE agents out, and that's simply not the case. Republicans want every town, city, state to dedicate their limited resources to entering what's called a 287G agreement with ICE to either do their enforcement work on the ground or hold people in custody for an additional 48 hours on detainers. That's 48 hours beyond the lawful detention. To be clear, that is illegal. In more than 700 counties in at least 9 states, there are policies or court decisions limiting these ICE detainers, as it is such a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment. And when people's Fourth Amendment rights are violated, it's the cities, not ICE, who face civil lawsuits. As a reminder to Republicans, the Fourth Amendment is the one against unlawful searches and seizures. Just last year, New York City's Department of Corrections had to pay $92.5 million in a settlement to those they unlawfully detained for ICE. Republicans are putting these mayors between a rock and a hard place. And the reason that they're doing this is because Trump is trying to get them to do illegal things. If they work for ICE, they risk violating their own residents' constitutional rights and opening themselves up to costly litigation. But if they don't do Trump's bidding, they're being threatened with losing federal funding. Today's hearing is nothing more than a shakedown against the mayors of some of our nation's biggest cities and a part of Trump's ongoing anti-city crusade. In Trump's America, if you disagree with his priorities, then you lose federal dollars. Just last week, Donald Trump actually called city leaders who oppose his cruel policies sick politicians. Just a few days before that, his border czar, Tom Homan, threatened that he would be bringing hell on the city of Boston. Mayor Wu, what do you think about these threats against Boston and their attempts to force you to enact policies that are against the very things your constituents voted for?
The laws are most important and the safety of our residents are most important. And what I hear from all of our residents across every one of our neighborhoods is that, in fact, undermining the trust is what would make our city less safe. And so we need everyone to feel secure in their communities, like they can reach out, they can call 911 when they need help. And in our city, those laws actually help Boston police solve crimes.
Thank you. Mr. Beer, question for you. I'd always thought that my Republican colleagues were strong supporters of state and local sovereignty and were against intrusion from the federal government. Do you think this lawsuit seems consistent with that position?
Oh, absolutely not. If you look at the Supreme Court precedent on this, it came from a gun control law that said that state and local governments had to cooperate with the federal government on gun control. The Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. Not a single member on this side, I believe, would be against that Supreme Court decision.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing illegal about protecting people's constitutional rights and due process, education, and equal treatment under the law. But it is illegal for the federal government to withhold federal dollars that these cities' taxpayer dollars have gone towards. Mayor Johnson, Chicago ranks as one of the largest cities in the U.S. and has the third largest metropolitan economy, boasting a GDP of $860 million. This makes it one of the most economically diverse cities in the nation, correct?
That is correct.
Would it be fair to say that your city generates billions in taxpayer revenue and that the average taxpayer in Chicago and Illinois contributes more than around $20,000 in federal income taxes, which is more than $1,310 above the national average?
That is absolutely
So
correct.
can we conclude that Chicago residents pay significantly more in taxes than they receive in return, contributing at least $5 in taxes for every $1 they get back in federal support?
More than our fair share.
Thank you. Only 9 states have taxpayers that contribute more to the federal government than they receive. All 4 of our mayors are from states on that list. Yet Republicans are saying that they should lose that money because they don't agree with their dear leader. Trump and Republicans are attempting to take money from blue cities and blue states and give them to their red states. Republicans too often demonize blue areas and cities that are the very areas that are keeping the economy going. The attacks we've heard on mayors today are not only shameful, they're dangerous capitulations to the impulses of this president who is trying to expand executive power in nearly every direction. I'd like to thank our mayors, Wu, Johnson, and Johnston for coming in today, having the strength of courage to stand up to this administration. Thank you. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mayor Adams, you've agreed today. Sorry, over here. You've agreed today that New York City is a sanctuary city. Is that right?
Based on the definitions, and there doesn't seem, Congressman, there's now a uniform definition of that. But yes,
right. But that's what you've proclaimed, Mayor Johnston. You've previously also declared that you're a sanctuary city. Mayor Johnson, you said that Chicago must lead with and live by the promise to be a sanctuary city. Mayor Wu, you said Boston police and other departments cannot cooperate with ICE when it comes to detaining on civil warrants. Of course, I don't know what Mayor Johnston would define it, but I do know that the Honorable Mayor Johnson from Chicago, they call theirs a welcoming city ordinance, and we've got Ms. Wu, Mayor Wu, who's referred to hers as a safe city. That's really interesting to me. So when you are a sanctuary city, you put limits on how much you're willing to cooperate with federal agencies' efforts to remove illegal aliens. And your policies are then contravene federal law. You just do. Under Title VIII of the U.S. Code, it says a federal, state, or local government entity or official may not prohibit or in any way restrict any government entity or official from sending to or receiving from the Immigration Naturalization Service any information regarding the citizenship or immigration status of any individual. Yeah, so when I look at your guys' ordinances, and I got them all up here, and they're really interesting stuff, and Denver, I think you testified previously that you rely on the statutory section, am I right, of the state statute. So let's just review this. There is a distinction, and some of you have made that. Mayor Johnson of Chicago made this repeatedly, and Mayor Wu of Boston did. There's a distinction between criminal warrant, and you say we cooperate on criminal warrant, but there's 2 levels of cooperation at least. There's a communication level, and there's a passing the person off. That's one level with the criminal. But the civil level, this is what I want to talk about for a second, because all of these ordinances proscribe communication and transfer of someone where there's a civil warrant. Now, I know that all of you understand that a removal order is a civil order. And that means none of you and none of your agencies within your municipalities are communicating or passing over someone where there's a ICE removal detainer. So I don't care how many times, 1,226 or whatever it was in 7 years, I don't care how many times you do it, but if you're not doing it for civil orders, then you're allowing people who have a removal order, who've had due process, because that's how you get a removal order. You're allowing them to stay in the country. You're in violation of this law right here. You are. You're in violation of that law right there. And you've got to start realizing what your criminal culpability is on that. And that's really what we're talking about here. So you don't think that's harboring, perhaps? But let's take a look at that next statute, please. That next federal statute. In conducting investigations and hearings, immigration officers and administrative law judges shall have reasonable access to examine evidence of any person or entity being investigated. If you're holding someone back, even if it's under a civil warrant, because that's what you said you're not going to participate in, and you are preventing access to that person or evidence, you're in violation of this. You have criminal culpability under this. And you'll notice there's no mens rea requirement here. This is it. Every one of you is exposed to criminal culpability here. That's the reality of it. Let's do the next one. Any person who knowing that a person is an alien, knowing or in reckless disregard, now you got a culpable mental state here, of the fact that an alien has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of law, conceals, harbors, or shields from detection, or attempts to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection, such alien in any place. You'll notice it doesn't make a distinction that all of y'all want to make of criminal warrants versus civil. You're all in violation of all three of these statutes. You got criminal culpability. I yield back.